12,000 years ago, the ocean was a different shape. The coastlines you know, every beach, every harbor, every port city on Earth, none of them existed. The shore was 80 to 120 meters lower. That is the height of a 40-story building. And everything humanity built along those ancient coasts, every village, every dock, every temple facing the tide, is now underwater. That is not speculation. That is the United States Geological Survey. That is oxygen isotope data from ice cores drilled in Greenland. That is coral reef analysis from Barbados, published in Nature. The sea rose, fast, during a period called Meltwater Pulse 1A, roughly 14,500 years ago. The ocean surged 14 to 18 meters in less than 5 centuries, 4 centimeters a year, a coastline retreating a kilometer in a single generation. And here is the part no one talks about. Not a single government on this planet runs a systematic program to search for human settlements on those submerged shelves. We spend billions scanning the surface of Mars for traces of microbial life. We do not scan our own seafloor for traces of cities. And every single time someone does look, off the coast of Japan, India, Egypt, Greece, they find something. 9 structures, 4 continents, 9 sets of questions that remain, very deliberately, unanswered. You are 25 meters below the surface, off the southern tip of Yonaguni, the westernmost island in Japan. The current is strong enough to drag you sideways. Visibility shifts with the tide. Your dive light cuts through blue-green water and lands on something that freezes you mid-kick. Steps, enormous steps, each one 1 meter to 2 meters tall, climbing in straight lines across a structure 100 meters long and 60 meters wide. Flat terraces, right angles, what appears to be a road, what appears to be a drainage channel. 45,000 square meters of geometry on the ocean floor. In winter, hammerhead sharks circle the structure in schools of hundreds, indifferent to the geometry beneath them. It was one of those sharks that brought Kihachiro Aratake here in 1986. He was a local diver, looking for a new dive spot. He found something that would consume the rest of his life. He renamed the cape Iseki Hanto, Monument Cape. His son Shotaro runs the dive shop now. Masaki Kimura, a marine geologist at the University of the Ryukyus, devoted 15 years of his career to this site. He documented what he believed were quarry marks, primitive carvings, animal-shaped sculptures. He published, he argued, he returned, each time more convinced. The response from the Japanese Agency for Cultural Affairs was silence. No survey, no official investigation, no classification as a cultural property. The stated reason: insufficient evidence of human activity. Robert Schoch, a geologist from Boston University, visited and concluded the structure was natural sandstone, fractured along bedding planes by seismic activity. A 2019 topographic study by Takayuki Ogata supported this. A 2024 paper by Sugi and colleagues at the Association of Japanese Geographers reinforced it further. And yet, no government body has ever conducted its own excavation. No agency has ever deployed the kind of equipment used on land sites of comparable ambiguity. The site sits in one of Japan's most seismically active zones. Earthquakes do fracture rock, but they do not typically produce drainage channels. Kimura spent a career asking the question. The establishment spent a career not answering it. And the structure sits where it has always sat, 25 meters down, in water cold enough to numb your hands, surrounded by sharks that do not care whether those steps were carved or cracked. 8 meters beneath the Mediterranean, 200 meters off the coast of Israel, there is a village that has been waiting 9,000 years for someone to notice. Atlit Yam was not supposed to exist. When Ehud Galili, a marine archaeologist with the Israel Antiquities Authority, stumbled on it in 1984 while searching for shipwrecks, he found stone houses. He found a well, 5.5 meters deep, built from dry stacked stone, the oldest stone-lined well ever discovered. He found 7 megaliths arranged in a semicircle on the seabed, each standing up to 1 meter tall, placed deliberately in a pattern that echoes stone circles found on land across Europe and the Near East, except this one was underwater, and it was 3,000 years older than Stonehenge. He found 90 burials, many still in fetal position, tucked beneath what had once been house floors. And in 2008, he found a mother and child. Their bones carried the oldest confirmed case of tuberculosis in the archaeological record. The strain was human, not bovine. That single detail overturned the prevailing theory that TB jumped from cattle. It jumped from us, from living too close together. 6,000 fish bones, bone fish hooks, a needle with a drilled eye, auditory exostosis in multiple skulls, bony growths inside the ear canal, caused by years of diving in cold water. These people were not casual fishermen. They were diving, 9,000 years ago. Maria Pereschi, of Italy's National Institute for Geophysics and Volcanology, proposed in her research that the village may have been abandoned in a single event, a 40-meter tsunami triggered by the collapse of Mount Etna's eastern flank, roughly 8,500 years ago. The fish stocks, ready for trade but never collected, support a sudden departure. The site is accessible to researchers. It is not accessible to the public. There is no protection program in place. Sand that once covered the ruins is shifting, exposing stone walls to salt erosion. Every year, a little more disappears. The well that survived 9 millennia is now dissolving into the sea. Remember this pattern: the discovery, the publication, the silence that follows. We will see it again, in India, in Greece, in Bolivia. The ocean preserves what governments forget. The Mahabharata, one of the oldest texts in human literature, describes a city called Dwarka, built on the coast of western India by the god Krishna. When Krishna died, the text says, the sea swallowed the city whole. For centuries, scholars called it allegory. Then S.R. Rao went looking. Rao, a marine archaeologist at India's National Institute of Oceanography, led 12 underwater expeditions between 1983 and 1990. Visibility in the Arabian Sea is 2 to 5 meters on a good day. You work by touch as much as by sight. And in that murk, 500 meters off the coast of modern Dwarka in Gujarat, Rao found fortification walls, a protective barrier stretching 580 meters, over 120 stone anchors, triangular, each with 3 holes, weighing 30 to 50 kilograms, and a shell seal, 20 by 18 millimeters, small enough to rest on your palm, bearing 3 animals in the late Harappan style: a bull, a unicorn, a goat, a tiny object, a massive implication. Because the Harappan civilization collapsed around 1900 BCE, and this seal was sitting on the ocean floor, exactly where a mythological text said a city would be. An inscription on a recovered vessel read, in post-Harappan script, Mahagachashapa, Sea Lord, protect. Rao's book, published in 1999, was cautious. He dated the visible structures to approximately 1500 BCE and avoided tying them directly to the epic. But the location was exact. The layout matched the text description. The anchors suggested a major port. The Archaeological Survey of India began its own investigation, then stopped, then started again, then stopped. The most recent serious effort came only in early 2025, the first in over 2 decades, using new sonar equipment that detected what the team called anomalies resembling wharf walls. In February of 2024, Prime Minister Narendra Modi himself dove to the site. The government of Gujarat announced plans for submarine tourism by October of that year. The official explanation for the decades of inaction: difficult conditions. The Arabian Sea does have powerful currents. Winter is the only viable season. But unofficially, another pressure exists: the political sensitivity of linking an archaeological site to a religious text. Proving the Mahabharata described a real place carries implications that extend far beyond marine geology. If one sacred text turns out to contain a verifiable map, what does that mean for every other ancient text we have dismissed as mythology? Something about this case made my fur stand up. Not the ruins, not the anchors, the timing. Every time the evidence got stronger, the funding got weaker. That is not how science is supposed to work. I have been following this case for a long time. And the thing that strikes me is not what was found. It is how many times the looking was stopped. For as long as anyone could remember, the fishermen of Mahabalipuram, a coastal town in Tamil Nadu, southern India, told stories about 7 great temples swallowed by the sea. Only one survived, the Shore Temple, now protected by the United Nations as a World Heritage Site. The rest, they said, were out there, beneath the waves. Nobody listened, until the ocean proved them right. On December 26th, 2004, the Indian Ocean tsunami struck the coast. The water retreated 500 meters, farther than anyone had ever seen. And for a few terrible, astonishing minutes, fishermen stood on exposed seabed, wet sand where the ocean had been moments before, and stared at granite walls, carved steps, and stone lions, 2 meters tall, each carved from a single block of rock, one sitting at attention, one crouched, ready to leap, guardians of a temple that had not seen daylight in centuries. Then the water came back, and it took the fishermen's fear with it, because now they knew the stories were true. Divers from the Archaeological Survey of India and the Indian Navy followed up. Sonar revealed a 70-meter wall, 1.8 meters high, 500 meters offshore, remains of 2 temples and a cave shrine. Beneath the Pallava-era structures, which date to the 7th century, they found foundations from the Sangam period, roughly 2,000 years old. Layers of crushed shells and ocean sediment between the strata confirmed previous tsunami events. This coastline had been hit before, and it had been submerged before. The legend of the 7 pagodas was not a legend. The fishermen were not wrong. They had been telling the truth for centuries, passed down from father to son across generations, and it took a disaster that killed over 200,000 people across 14 countries to make anyone check. Alok Tripathi, the ASI's lead underwater archaeologist, told reporters that the tsunami did not do anything extraordinary. But privately, other researchers admitted, from a purely archaeological point of view, the tsunami was useful, the cruelest kind of vindication. India gave us cities confirmed by tsunamis, and sacred texts confirmed by sonar. The next discovery asks for less faith and more geology, because it was published in a peer-reviewed journal, confirmed by 2 independent researchers, and then abandoned by everyone. In 2015, a team led by geologists Emmanuel Lodolo and Zvi Ben Avraham published a paper in the Journal of Archaeological Science, Reports. The subject was a single stone, found at the bottom of the Sicilian Channel, the shallow strait between Sicily and Tunisia. The stone was 12 meters long. It weighed approximately 15 tons. It had 3 holes drilled through it at regular intervals, each hole identical in diameter. The material did not match the surrounding seabed. It was not local rock. Someone had brought it there, shaped it, erected it, and then the sea had come. It sat at a depth of 40 meters, on a submerged ridge called the Pantelleria Vecchia Bank. Based on sea level data, the bank was dry land roughly 9,350 years ago. At that time, the channel between Sicily and Africa was not a channel. It was a bridge, and someone built a monument on it. Lodolo and Ben Avraham's conclusion was straightforward. The monolith was artificially shaped, consistent with known megalithic construction techniques. A second fragment was found nearby. The paper was peer-reviewed. It was published. And then, nothing. No follow-up expedition. No government interest. No media attention beyond a brief cycle in 2015. A 12-meter carved stone sits on the floor of the Mediterranean, and no one went back. That phrase should sound familiar by now. 3 to 4 meters below the surface of the Vatica Bay, off the southern tip of the Peloponnese in Greece, there is an entire city you can see through a snorkel mask. Pablo Petri is not ambiguous. It is not debated. It is the oldest submerged planned city ever documented. Streets, buildings with up to 12 rooms, tombs, a central square measuring 40 by 20 meters, and a water supply system with carved channels. 80,000 square meters of urban layout, readable like a blueprint. Ceramic analysis dates continuous habitation from 3500 BCE to 1100 BCE, nearly 2,500 years. Geologist Phokionis Negris, then president of the Athens Academy, noted the site in 1904. Oceanographer Nicholas Fleming rediscovered it in 1967 and spent the following decades arguing that what lay beneath the bay was not rubble, not geological debris, but a city, a real, planned, inhabited city. He was politely ignored for 40 years. It was not until 2009 that a team from the University of Nottingham returned with modern sonar equipment and discovered 9,000 additional square meters of structures, including a large rectangular hall that nobody had mapped before. The city was 700 years older than anyone had assumed. Fleming had been right the whole time. The technology to prove it existed for decades before anyone bothered to use it. It was declared an underwater archaeological site in 1976. It was placed on the World Monuments Watch list in 2016. It is still being damaged. Freighters illegally drop anchors in the bay. ballast water is dumped. The Greek Ephemerate of Underwater Antiquities, according to the site's own preservation advocates, has done more to obstruct international research teams than to facilitate them. Obsidian blades recovered from the site are still sharp after 5,000 years. A bronze figurine. Thousands of loom weights, evidence of textile production, and all of it sitting in shallow, warm, accessible water, the easiest possible conditions for excavation. The excuse is never the ocean. The excuse is always something else. I have spent more time than I should staring at the sonar maps of this place, and what unsettles me is not the age. It is how little effort it would take to protect it, and how consistently that effort is not made. Leave the warm Mediterranean behind. We are going to the roof of the world. Lake Titicaca sits 3,812 meters above sea level. The air is thin. The water is 10 to 14 degrees. Divers wear dry suits and descend slowly. Altitude makes decompression unpredictable. In the year 2000, an international expedition made over 200 dives into the sacred lake of the Incas. What they found was not Incan. It was older. A temple, 200 meters by 50 meters, nearly 2 football fields, belonging to the Tiwanaku civilization, which preceded the Inca by 500 years. Alongside it, agricultural terraces, a road, and a wall stretching 800 meters. Christophe Dallaire, of the Free University of Brussels, has led systematic excavations since 2012. His team recovered ceremonial offerings, figurines carved from lapis lazuli, ceramic vessels, incense burners. In 2019, they opened an untouched stone box and found a golden bracelet, tightly coiled, resting beside a figurine of a llama carved from spondylus shell, a deep-sea mollusk that does not live in fresh water. Someone had carried that shell across mountains and jungles to place it in a stone box at the bottom of a frozen lake. The box had waited 500 years for someone to lift the lid. In 2016, drone surveys revealed previously unknown structures across 411 hectares. A stone temple covering 17 hectares, approximately 100 circular and rectangular platforms, canals, and roads. Over 10,000 artifacts have been recovered. Bolivia and UNESCO announced a joint project, the Museo Subaquático Titicaca, an underwater museum. Cost, $10 million. That was years ago. The museum has not been built. The timeline remains unclear. Meanwhile, looting is a documented problem. Artifacts vanish before they can be catalogued. Eduardo Pareja, a Bolivian researcher, called the 2000 discovery the greatest archaeological find of the new millennium. It may well be. And yet the greatest archaeological find of the new millennium still has no museum, no comprehensive protection plan, and no guarantee it will survive the next decade intact. Herodotus wrote about a great port city at the mouth of the Nile, where Helen of Troy and Paris took shelter. For 2,000 years, historians assumed he was embellishing. The city, called Thonis by the Egyptians, Heraklion by the Greeks, appeared in no modern map. It was filed under myth. In 2000, a French underwater archaeologist named Franck Godiot, who had spent 5 years searching the Bay of Aboukir, found it, 6.5 kilometers from the modern shoreline of Egypt, under 10 meters of water and centuries of Nile silt. His method was meticulous, map first, touch last. But when the first diver's light hit the face of a stone pharaoh staring up through the murk, 5 meters of red granite lying on its side, coated in sediment, meticulous gave way to awe. What emerged from the murk over the following years reads like an inventory of impossibilities. A statue of the god Hapi, 5.4 meters tall, the largest ever found of that deity, lying on its side in the sediment. A red granite statue of a Ptolemaic king, 5 meters tall, 5.5 tons, broken into 5 pieces. A stele, the decree of Nectanebo I, that proved Thonis and Heraklion were the same city. 64 shipwrecks, one of the densest concentrations of ancient vessels ever recorded. In 2021, a Ptolemaic warship over 25 meters long was found buried under 5 meters of clay. In 2023, a Greek temple to Aphrodite, with silver ritual dishes and gold jewelry. Godiot's own estimate, 5% has been excavated. At the current pace, full excavation will take 200 more years. 5%. That means 95% of a city Herodotus described, a city with temples, warehouses, canals, a harbor, is still sealed beneath the seabed. And this is not a site that lacks funding or recognition. The European Institute for Underwater Archaeology and the Egyptian government collaborate actively. The problem is not neglect. The problem is scale. The ocean does not give things back quickly. I have been pulling at threads on this topic for longer than I care to admit, and the thread that refuses to break is this. Every site we have looked at tonight was found by someone who went looking without being asked to. Galili was searching for shipwrecks. Aratake was looking for sharks. Gaudio spent 5 years and his own resources before he found a single stone. The pattern is not that these places are hidden. The pattern is that nobody is assigned to find them. Every site we have visited was drowned by nature. Earthquakes, rising seas, tsunamis. This last one was drowned by a signature. In 1959, the government of the People's Republic of China ordered the flooding of a valley in Zhejiang province to build the Shinan River hydroelectric dam. 300,000 people were relocated. 1,300 villages disappeared beneath a rising lake. 2 cities went under. One of them was Xicheng, the Lion City. Founded during the Eastern Han Dynasty, it had stood for over 1,700 years. 5 city gates, one more than traditional. 265 stone arches, carved dragons, carved phoenixes, calligraphy etched into walls that had survived every dynasty from the Han through the Qing. And then, in a matter of months, it was gone. The lake, now called Qiandao, Thousand Island Lake, is 40 meters deep in places. Visibility at the surface is barely 1.5 meters. But as you descend, the water clears. At depth, you can see 7 meters ahead. In 2001, divers from Beijing's Dragon Diving Club descended past the thermocline, past the green murk, into clarity. And what they found was a city frozen in time. Not ruined, not eroded, preserved. As if someone had pressed pause in 1959 and never pressed play. Cold, still, fresh water had done what no museum could. No ultraviolet light, no wind, no rain, no vandalism. Stone lions guarded gates. Arches stood intact, carved detail still sharp. Calligraphy from 1777, legible. And silence. No fish, no current, no life. Just stone and water and the sound of your own breathing. In 2011, Chinese National Geography published the first photographs. The images went viral. For a brief moment, the world remembered that an entire city was sitting at the bottom of a man-made lake. Then the moment passed. The lake is used to produce bottled water now. Nongfu Spring, one of the biggest brands in China. Diver access has been restricted. The city remains beneath a surface that most tourists see only from a sightseeing boat, sipping from bottles filled with the water that drowned it. 300,000 people lost their homes so a dam could be built. Beneath the reservoir, a city that survived 17 centuries was sealed in the first year of a political decision. And the water that buried it now generates electricity and fills plastic bottles. Every site we have visited was hidden by water. This is the only one that was hidden on purpose. 9 sites, 4 continents, 9,000 years of human construction, sealed beneath the surface of the ocean, or a lake, or a sea, in varying states of neglect, denial, and deliberate silence. The sea rose 120 meters. That is established science. Humans built on coastlines for millennia before that rise. That is established archaeology. And no government on Earth runs a program to systematically find what is down there. That is established policy. Every time someone searches on their own, with their own funding, their own obsession, their own career on the line, they find something. Every single time. We scan the ocean floor for oil, for cables, for military wreckage. We do not scan it for ourselves. Most people hear underwater ruins and picture Atlantis, a fantasy, a myth, a story for children. You sat through 9 real places, documented by real archaeologists, published in real journals, visible to anyone willing to put on a mask and dive. The fantasy is not that these places exist. The fantasy is that we have found them all. Pick one site. Tell me what you think is really down there. The most compelling case gets pinned. Subscribe if you want to see what else is hiding in plain sight, or in plain depth. Because we have mapped the surface of the moon in higher resolution than the floor of our own ocean. And personally, I think that is not an accident, it is a preference.